Entrepreneurship, got that inspiration. Yeah, now I'm just doing it. Working on these projects, my ideas I'm pursuing. No matter what the problem, the solution, I'm proving it. Let's talk about it and open up the dialogue. Contractors telling their stories about how they got it started and how they keep it going. The passion fuels the mission. Now we blasting into orbit, we gone. That's where we grow from. Started with the vision, make the pitch and knock it out the park like home runs. We keep it moving, self-belief, no doubt. Pass off the mic to my man's Jim Cloud. I don't wanna stop for nothing.
Jim Cloud and Bob Mueller here on Contractors Stories. Welcome to the program. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Jim. Hey, glad to be here today. I think it's going to be a fun show. I'm excited to meet the guest that you're going to be introducing to us today.
Adam Greer, EZ Lift Garage Doors and More. I've known Adam for a very long time. He's been a client of mine for about 10 years or so, and he has got quite a story. He's got multiple stories. Hopefully he'll share all the juicy stuff from years ago.
No, I think that I heard that he is the $1 million man, but maybe not the $1 million type of man we're thinking about. Maybe we'll get into that story a little bit today.
Yeah, it has to do with his life, and it's a wild story about what cost him about $1.5 million to keep going on in his life.
Yeah. What amazing perseverance and stuff like that. But I guess it is that old adage about, if I offered you $1 million today, would you take it if you didn't get to wake up tomorrow? And I think we get that answer in this interview today.
Yeah. All right, let's go out to Adam now.
All right, sounds good.
On Contractor Stories, Bob and I have guests on the program that really open themselves up. Actually, no pun intended, to our guest here today, Adam Greer from EZ Lift Garage Doors and More, a very good friend of mine. Adam, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be part of Check a Pro and all the things you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You and I have known each other for a long time. We've worked together. It's been an honor to promote your business and to have you part of our organization at Check a Pro. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, no problem.
So you were willing to come on this program. And, Bob and I told you before we started that we're going to go back to your past, and you have a past that's different than most. And I have to say, you've overcome many things, and you've just done some amazing things from where you were. Many people would have given up, and some people would have died, actually. And I won't give all that away. Let's start with where you are today, Adam. Let's talk a little bit about your business, your family life, and then I want to go back to when you were a child. Then we're going to circle all the way back to where you are today. EZ Lift Garage Doors and More. Let's start with your business. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a lot. So started the business in 2013, primarily just garage doors, maintenance, installation, that type of thing. And then as it progressed, we got into storage situations in the garage, different things in the garage. And then we finally advanced even to attic efficiency. So that's where the and more came on, because we've started adding a lot of different services. So today what we do is everything in the garage, from the epoxy floor to storage, maintenance, installation, to your attic, doing attic decking, attic ladder replacements, installs, insulation, ventilation. So we cover quite a bit. And my son is our vice president, and he's part of this with me. And my daughter is our administrator. My wife, of course, is my right hand for everything. So she's with me. So we're continuing to grow and expand in our services for our community.
Yep, it is a family-owned and operated business. I know your entire family. They've been to my home. I've been to your home. It's like we're family, right, brother?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great business based in Katy, Texas, outside of Houston. Now that we've established that, let's go back in time. Can you tell us who Adam Greer was as a sixth grader? Who were you? What were you doing? What were your interests?
As a sixth grader, I was a punk. Let's just say that. I was purposefully, my goal was to become a mobster, whatever that meant. I'm
Whatever
not
it took.
Italian pure, yeah. So I'm not pure Italian, so I couldn't join the mafia. I was like, but I hung around with people who were in any kind of crime life, and my goal was I wanted to be successful in the crime world, and so I started doing things. Even in sixth grade, I got into to I got into crime, and even started tampering in drugs by seventh grade. I was doing stuff, but so it's not a proud history. It was a sabotaging life, actually, and but I had a goal. It was to become a bigger punk than I was. So don't know how that came about. It's not like I was raised in that environment. Nobody in my family history is, part of any of that. It was just, it started. Really, it started. I started stealing from people's homes in sixth grade, and if they had open. It's interesting to be doing garage doors now. I'd go into garages that were open and help myself to things, and it just progressed from there too. I don't want to go too much in everything, but I can remember literally I'd sneak off during one of the recesses, and this is in sixth grade, elementary school, and we'd go to the local Circle K, and I'd feel that was when gym bags were popular. Me and a couple of friends would fill our gym bags with candy and come back during lunch and sell it during lunch break. So I learned unfortunately how to be a jerk, and so that's where sixth grade was. I had no real goals other than that.
So you were an entrepreneur. That's the spin on it, right? In sixth grade, you were an entrepreneur, and you purchased at a very low cost wholesale candy, or acquired it and sold it at full retail.
Acquired it, yes.
Acquired it, yeah. Yes. The acquisition cost was pretty good. Okay, so you were a criminal in sixth grade. So where did it progress from there? So let's skip 6 years. How about 12th, right? Did you finish high school?
I finished high school.
Okay. All right. So you graduated from high school. Who were you then?
I was already into white collar crime throughout high school. I was embezzling from my employer, and I was had moved up in my dealing, and I was now using and dealing methamphetamine, and then when I graduated, got into cocaine and began a life of that for a while, and my crime life had accelerated considerably. And there's not an employer that I worked for example, till I turned my life around. But there's not an employer, including my dad's company. He was vice president of I'll leave all the information alone. But he was vice president of a company, and I was embezzling from that company even. And so I really got into, I was determined. And then I met my wife in New York in '86, and that is where everything changed. Everything began to turn around. I don't know how much of that story you want me to go into, but I was working in New York, based out of California. It was a 6-month job in New York, upstate New York. Met her, realized there was more to our relationship than just a 6-month stay in New York. But I was hiding. I always stayed employed, always had a job, even when I was doing any of my criminal behavior. So it was nobody knew. My parents didn't know, but I was hiding it. And when I was there in New York, obviously, she didn't know any of that. And then she decided she wanted to come back to California with me. And so I realized I had to come clean with some things. Now, I had no intention on stopping the life. I was just going to regroup and how to hide it. And she will probably be embarrassed by this, but I remember when I told her, I realized I needed to tell her what she's coming home to. Again, fully intending on lying and not changing. And she just looked at me and said, I don't like the life you've described, but here's what I want you to do. Whatever you tell me you're going to do today, let it be the truth. And I'm with you either way. And so I realized I had a choice, and it kind of scared me. First time I was telling truth to somebody in years, and she gave me the opportunity to continue the life or not. And so I made her a promise that it was done, and that only lasted about a year. Got back into it, was hiding from her again, and we'd already been married by that point, and our first kid was on the way, and that's the next time I realized it's time to. We got kids coming, and I got to start doing some stuff. So, came clean again. She stayed with me, and haven't looked back on it. Haven't began to just live a real life, and we ended up with 2 kids, and we're now 36 years married almost. But
Wow.
She stuck with me through some stuff, and so I don't know how far more you want to go in that life, where you want to go next. But I'll trust you to. What's the next thing you want to know?
Well, you were Texas born. Was that the area you grew up in, or what area did you grow up in?
No, born in San Francisco Bay Area, born and raised. Left California in 2001. Ended up going back to upstate New York to my wife's home turf, and we spent a few years there, and then into South Carolina in 2005, and 2006, and then we ended up in Katy in 2011, and been here ever since. Yeah.
So the life of crime was in California.
California.
Got your start over there. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. There was some level in. Yeah, not much. Pretty much, yeah. When I left California, that's when I really walked away from everything. But it was a mess. There's a history that I'm not proud of, but it is my story. So
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I met you, you had been saved. I mean, you weren't the same person at all. As a matter of fact, you look at those people today, and you're like, that guy should be in jail or prison. We've had discussions about some people who have stolen, right? Kind of the same type of thing that you were doing, but now that you've changed decades later, you look at these younger people saying, that guy should be in prison.
Yeah.
But that could have been you. Did you spend any time incarcerated?
I did not, and I don't know how. There are plenty moments when I should have, and just stayed out of jail. I wasn't trying to. I mean, that would have helped my image, if you will. You know what I mean? The harder core you can be, the more clout you have, supposedly. But stayed out of jail, and never was even arrested. Should have OD'd plenty of times. Heavy partying. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that definitely took place that should have terminated my freedom or terminated my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine if you had been caught and arrested, and certainly if you went to prison, you would have had a very difficult time getting a job, which actually happens to people all the time in home service. There's a lot of people that are in home service because they're pretty good with their hands, but employers don't want their hands in a cookie jar, right? So they're like, I won't hire you, and they go out on their own. And that's one reason why I started Check-A-Pro back in 2005. Is kind of interesting.
Because of your criminal life that you had to hide?
No, because I had to check out the criminals and make sure that they weren't on my website of pre-qualified contractors. And every once in a while, we would do a check and find somebody, and I'm like, this guy doesn't look like he'd be in prison, but he spent 6 years. There was a guy who ended up going to prison for, child abuse, or I guess he was molesting. It's a long story. Adam, I think you know that story, but anyway, I'll tell you offline. And it was just crazy. And after I found that out, I had to let him go. So, you're in an industry where this story isn't all that outlandish.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, it's almost normal to have some background to most of us. We've all put in time, but the turnaround, as was I go from that life to becoming a full-time pastor in '97, and pastored for up until 2014. So I go to the flip other side, and then I began to work with, obviously that became my ministry, is a lot working with people in that life, helping them. I was, I knew the story, and I knew how to turn around, and I even only started EZ Lift, obviously, as you know, I just need to be, I wasn't full-time in pay, full-time in ministry, but you never get paid full-time very much. And so had to have a bivocation. And so I actually got into the garage door industry in the 80s. So I had that experience. And so it became a natural thing, only to supplement my income. It was never meant to be what it is today. And then Stepped out of the ministry in 2014, and this became, full-time and bigger than I ever. I was as you've heard me say many times, accidentally successful, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I had to figure it out fast, right? So yeah, I've been on one side of the spectrum and on the other side, and here we are. So
yeah, Adam, you operate your business different than many other small business owners. You have a conscience. I'm not saying other ones don't. I'm just saying that you find it difficult to do certain things that other aggressive service professionals will do to grow their business. Talk about that struggle a bit. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's interesting. On the way in here to the office, I get a guy who calls up, and he's obviously heard from some other people. He's looking for another opinion. Thinks he needs 18 inches of insulation above his garage. So without getting into too much technical discussion, you'll cause all kinds of problems. So I'm actually, I wouldn't say arguing, but the guys want me to just give him a price. I'm trying to help him understand. I'll sell you this. I could sell you this, but I won't, because I'll create bigger problems. And he really was suspicious, and we worked it out. I'm going to actually go talk with him in person about it, but I'm not sure what he's heard, but I'm trying to tell him he's already gotten quotes. People are going to come and do this. That's an unhealthy option. And I couldn't do it. And I told him, I'm not going to sell it to you. If this is what you want, I'm not your guy. And I could have, that's quite a bit of money at 18 inches, So money is never our motivation. Clear, we got to pay our bills. Yes. But education, making sure, that's actually one of the reasons I went full time with this, is to try to restore the image of the home service provider, that we're not all out to just, clean you out and see you next time and hope, it's, we operate with integrity, and I believe education is the best thing we can do. And if we're not the right answer, I'm not going to sell you whatever product, from garage doors to insulation. It's just not going to happen. And I've had people get mad at me. I've had people actually hang up, and you're like, I don't understand that. I've given you the right advice, but they don't trust me. I don't understand that, but that's who we are.
It's interesting because I understand that. So if someone asked me, hey, Jim, can you give me some smokes and a bottle of whiskey? I wouldn't sell it to them. I'd say, if you want to go buy it, do it, but I'm not going to, because I don't think that's good for you long term. Even going to KFC, nothing against KFC specifically, but if you eat a bucket of fried chicken a day, I couldn't sell that to you. I would never be behind the counter at KFC. I just don't believe in it. I'm more into some more natural type food. Call me crazy and un-American, but so for the same reason, right, Adam? It's you're like, I can't sleep at night. If we put insulation up there, he didn't need it in the first place. And number two, it's bad for their health. And I mean, how can you do that?
Yeah. It's and it's not just insulation. If I won't do what they're asking for to my grandmother, then I won't do it to anyone. That's kind of our philosophy. Treat them like we would treat our grandma, and seniors get taken advantage of constantly. So that's one of the reasons we use that as our model. Our motto is, if I can't sell it to her, I will not sell it to you. It's just, that has to be that's where we set our standard, and we live by it and we fall by it sometimes, but that's who we are and will always be.
Something people don't know about you is that you're the $1 million man. People are like, that guy's $1 million man. Yeah. Would you explain to everybody what I mean by that, and then explain how you got to be that $1 million man?
So I wish you were talking dollar signs. That would be great, but that clearly is not what you're talking about. So a year ago, July 5th, I had a heart transplant, and that's an incredible journey. And so I'm a little over a year now, and still rebuilding physically. The heart's doing great, but it took a toll on my body. And so I'm not 100% that way. And my goal is to get back to that point. But it started in 2005. I had bronchitis, and like us male species tend to do, I know the doctor, I'll just work through it. And after about a month, I couldn't shake it. And I went to the ER thinking I must have pneumonia. I was 40 years old at the time. And I said, here's my symptoms. I think I've got pneumonia. And, it sounds like it. They did some tests, came back in a little bit later and said, you're actually dying. And had bronchitis, but it had settled in my heart. Viruses I didn't know at that time, but they can settle in your organs, and your heart is one of the most susceptible organs for that. And so I destroyed my own heart by being stubborn. And my wife had asked me to go to the doctor, of course, and I'll get through it, and so it did it, and they actually at that time said I wouldn't survive the year. That was 2005, and this is they told me I was in trouble and I was dying fast, and I was actually admitted to the hospital, the transplant ward. Told that point I wasn't going home without a new heart. 2 weeks later, things changed dramatically. We got a specialist involved who came up with a medicine cocktail, and it radically flipped things around. They'd installed a defibrillator by that point and all these life-saving. And so September of 05, they released me from the hospital. They couldn't justify keeping me in the ward anymore. I was doing so well. I came in at rest. I was 150 beats at rest. And that was on a Friday, the day that Katrina hit, actually. And by Monday, I was down 40 pounds. I had so much fluid on me. They, of course, put on diuretics. And then by the end of the week, when that doctor got involved, he got my heart rate down to 65. And they couldn't explain it. Even with the meds, of course, they claimed to brilliance, but they really didn't have an answer as to why it flipped so well. Kept me for another week. I was stir crazy. Everyone in the wing is waiting for heart or already, it's just different environment. I was restless and pacing and walking, causing my IV pole, walking the ward, and they finally said, look, we don't have an answer, but we're going to send you home, live your life, let's see what happens. So I wasn't officially removed from the idea of transplant, but they just didn't know what to say. And so February of 06, they told me that you're not anywhere. We're not even talking transplant for now. They said your heart is damaged, and someday you're going to most likely need a heart. 17 years later, I outlived the expectancy. Even if I had gotten a heart at that point, that time the average was 15, 17 years, somewhere in that range. So I would have probably been looking at a second transplant anyway. So I outlived that first episode, and then 2022 became real and deteriorated fast, really out of nowhere. And I say that, as you know, Jim, in 2019, I had an episode where I passed out, and I was on the local highway here, local street, heading to a job, and had what they call tachycardia, passed out. And when I woke up, I was in somebody's living room. I drove right through their apartment complex, and the defibrillator that had been installed in 2005 had been replaced in 2014. Battery had died. So they replaced it in 2014. So I was on my second defibrillator. Hadn't used it. It wasn't an issue, but I used it that day. It said it actually saved my life. So I was dead, technically.
Wow.
Zapped me back to life. When I woke up, I'm staring at this chaos. And of course, went to the hospital, and they said, listen, this could be a sign that things are heading the wrong way. But then I lived another 2 years, a little more than that, because no symptom free. When I released from the hospital, I was fine and back in life. But in 2022, things just began. I knew this is it. We're at the end of time, and trying to hide it from everybody and hide it from my family. Because I didn't know what to do. We didn't have insurance at the time. That's a whole other story how that even came about. That it got paid for, but it is $1.5 million to go through the surgery to get to that point of being released. And it's probably been $1 million in aftercare close to it, all the appointments and all the meds and stuff that will be part of the rest of my life. So yeah, I'm the $1 million man, but it would be nice if it was the other way. Yes. But here I am, and loving life, living my best life, and loving my family. And I've got 7 grandkids, and get to watch them all grow. And my oldest grandson was out on his first job with me and my son the other day. We took a picture of the 3 of us in a garage. And so 3rd generation is coming up, and I get to be part of all that.
Yeah, that's exciting. A 3rd generation. Going back to your heart transplant, $1.5 million. You didn't have that money, correct?
Did not.
Yeah.
No,
So,
I was uninsured staying in the hospital.
Mhm.
They didn't know what they were going to do.
yeah. And of course, that's going to be covered somehow, some way. I'm curious though, and I'm not sure how to pose this. I don't want to sound that I'm not loving and caring, but just hear me out. If you had a choice where the doctor said, look, we need $1.5 million and you can pay it off, but it's going to take every dime you have, and you and your family are going to be living in a tent somewhere. Okay. Would you go that far to stay alive? Because it's interesting. We take things for granted, right? But when push comes to shove, how much is our life really worth? So, I mean, right?
I've never even had someone ask that question.
Well,
That's
sorry about
interesting.
that. I'm a little different, right? I think in those ways, because we take health for granted. I've got 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 ears. Everything works well. My lungs are fine and so forth. But if something failed, like the heart, I would do anything. I would sell everything I have. I would live in a tent. Or would I? Because if it cost my family everything, would I say, no, I'll just take my chances? What do you think?
So as I'm pondering this, so here's the thing, because I was diagnosed in 05, of course, my kids grew up in adulthood with that lingering possibility. So it wasn't like we were caught off guard for this. So we had prepared for my death then as a family, and I didn't. That doesn't make it easier. I mean, it has to have some level of difference in how we approached it when it got the final, this is it. So I was prepared to die, and my family was prepared for that to happen. Of course, I didn't want to, but when I finally came clean with my wife, where I actually got admitted to the hospital, there was a couple of weeks where I was still trying to fight through it, still going to work every day. But I would tell her goodbye every morning, and it was a real goodbye. I did not know I was going to come home. So we had really, grappled with this. This could be it. I had lived already a decent life since original diagnosis. So how far would I go? I would not, this is off the cuff, but I wouldn't want to burden my family with going bankrupt, because then what good would it do at that point? I mean, I'm sure they would say, hey, we're glad dad's here and grandkids are glad, Papa's here. But personally, as a male, as the man, as the husband, dad, however you want to look at that would be a burden that I would not want. I don't know what good that would be. So I'm living, okay, but we're all starving and homeless and businesses bankrupt. I mean, I don't know. I know they would argue with me. When they see this, they're going to go, Dad, what are you talking about? My wife's going to say, if I had the choice and that was the option, I'd pull my own plug. I wouldn't want to burden them with that. I watched my mom and dad, both are deceased. I watched them go through just what it did to us as a family. And it wasn't that I was mad but the pain to watch them suffer through as they prolong their life through, different measures. I didn't like that. I would have rather they passed in a more healthy state. But by the time they both did, they were just fully deteriorated, and they were in pain. They hated life, miserable. And, death is going to come to all of us. None of us are going to escape it. That's just the way it is. If mine had been in 2022, then that's what it would have been. I would not have fought. I got insurance. That's the miracle in this whole thing. Had a friend who sells insurance. The doctors would tell me, look, we can't do much more. We're keeping you alive, but the bills already were well racked up. We can't proceed with the idea of transplantation until we have some way of covering it, whether it be through a grant or insurance or something. So they were looking, they were trying as much as they could as a hospitals down Methodist in Houston. But I called a friend who sells insurance. I'm like, man, what's out there? I'm at that point. I got to do or die right now. No pun intended, but that's where we were. And so she called me back about 45 minutes later. She said, I think I've got something. She found this government program, all kinds of arguments on that. Fine, whatever. I'm not, but up until March of 22, it was open, and it was no pre-existing condition, $89 a month.
Wow.
100% coverage. And it would have been this is like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. it would have gone into effect if I signed on the following Monday. So I'm like, well, absolutely, you know, let's do this. So I called the financial assistants at the hospital. I said, look, I've got insurance. Let's do this. They couldn't believe I found it. I told them, so they really were stumped, and I gave them the insurance broker's number. So call and find, make sure I'm accurate. Financial department calls it back up and says, she's got you covered. Let's get started. And it went into fast. It accelerated everything, of course, at that point. They were able to do all the tests they needed and start some more aggressive treatments to keep me alive, transplant. So I was in the hospital for a total of 9 weeks before I went home, and got my transplant, on July 5th. And it's had that insurance not come, I wouldn't be here. I was going to die. I mean, I wasn't going home except in a bag or with a heart. So we were at that point, and but I got covered.
Yeah.
And so I'm here to talk about it. So
That's incredible. I think that answers the age-old question, though. If I were to give you $1 million and you could not wake up in the morning, would you take it?
yeah, I'd give it to my wife.
Oh man, you are. By the way, you are a real man, Adam Greer. You are.
Oh, wow.
You're the guy who's just going to say, "Stand back, family. I'm going to run into the fire or the firing line, and I'm going to take the hits." But like Bob said, it's a no-brainer. I've asked people before at my age, and we're all about the same age, actually. We're all pretty close to the same age. I asked them, if someone offered you $1 billion, would you spend the next 10 years in prison? I wouldn't. No way.
What good is that?
Well, and I'll say, while in prison, you don't have to be in the general, right? So you're by yourself, and you got a TV, and you got a masseuse. I mean, it's not bad, but you can't leave. Like you're in prison. Now, for me, for the next 10 years, I'll be 67 years old by the time these next 10 years for me are huge. Would you guys take that money, $1 billion for 10 years?
I wouldn't.
No, that's interesting.
My family would be, they would be mad at me.
Not at our age anymore. No.
Yeah. But I could make an argument for a 25-year-old to sacrifice 25 to 35. That's a different story, isn't it now?
Probably, especially, without a family, if you're at that age where you're just you and you're living life, you're going, oh, that's awesome. I could do 10 years. You can't, honestly. By the end of 10 years, you're going to become a criminal, most likely. You'll be a bitter person, not enjoying your money when you get out, but you don't think that way at 23. You're invincible and the world's your, playground, right? So, but when you mature and life really matters, it's no way.
Well, think about this, guys. This is kind of interesting. Think about how many people from the age of 25 to 65 are in their own prison. They work all the time. They don't see their family. They're traveling. It's almost the same thing, but they're not getting $1 billion. It's very interesting. So, hey, Adam, what's your biggest regret?
Man, there's a lot. It's hard to answer because I am who I am today, and I am where I am today because of my life. Mm-hmm. It's always that, you change one thing and everything else changes, right? So I wish I would have respected my parents more, for sure. I hate that, especially as you heard me talk about already, my dad, how I did some things. He was the reason. My dad and I didn't have a real good relationship, so it became better as I became older, obviously. But he was part of the reason I'm like, screw this, man, screw life. And I was set out on a course, and I disrespected him and all of my life until my first kid was here. Actually, we had a relationship, and the reason I literally, there's no one's gonna figure this out, but there was a warehouse that my dad in his office and all the headquarters, in front, and there was a back door to this warehouse. And so I'd be at the back door moving product, not company product. And even the president's children were some of my customers. I was just daring my dad to come at me. You know what I mean? It was just a different a different life. And so he died. And I don't even know. It's been so long, but I regret that. I did not have the relationship that I have worked hard for with my son. That's the regret. Life comes at you, it comes at you fast. So if I can give anyone advice, make your relationships count.
Yeah.
I agree. One advantage to
You
being
messed me up, dude.
sorry, man. One of the advantage of being seasoned as we are, it's easy to look back and say, boy, I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
So on that note, what advice would you give the 25-year-old Adam from you today? So you're more than twice that age. If you went back in time, would you shake that kid? What would you say to that boy?
I'd shake the shit out of him. I would. That was a pivotal point actually in my life. That was when rubber was meeting the road, things were happening. It's really just what I just said. It's go fix things. Go back and restore. I had a lot of broken. I left a lot of wake, and there was a lot of not just family. There was friendships and even acquaintances that I used and neglected, threw away. I was self-destructive, and I used people to get there, and didn't. And I guarantee there's gonna be people watch this thinking, no, there's no way. I hid it well. I was not a good person. Most people won't believe that. They don't know my thought life and the things I was doing and the manipulation that I was doing. And go fix the relationships. Go fix your history. Try to rewrite it. It's impossible, but try to capture it and restore it to the best possibility, which I did with my dad. I mean, we did work. We said I love you to each other one time, and that was actually on his deathbed. But we knew it before then. We just didn't know how to say that. We know how to show it, but a lot of years, there's a lot of history, and so we didn't get past being real with each other until the end, and you regret that. So
yeah. So it sounds like you fixed some of those relationships, but the most important one, it sounds like you found, was the one upstairs, the man upstairs.
Absolutely.
Is that when it all changed for you?
Absolutely. What's interesting about that is I knew God was real. There was never a point you had to tell me that. I grew up knowing that in some weird warped way that I still don't understand. People come to me with spiritual questions and let's talk about God. We've been in some of the most highest states we're in, and I knew nothing about the Bible. People would ask me Bible questions, and I can't even tell you what kind of tripe I threw out there, but people would come to me with trying to find answers. We were all trying to find answers. And I was always a leader in every job. Even in my most criminal behavior, I became a leader in my dad's company. I became, a foreman. I became manager in Taco Bell when I was embezzling all kinds of money from Taco Bell. I always reached leadership, and I knew there was something more. And I would argue with God when I can tell you conversations where I heard him tell me, "Are you ready?" And I remember vividly as I looked up in the sky one day with a straw in my hand, and it's not yet, and went down and stored another line, and so it wasn't shocking. So, wow, God's real. It wasn't that moment, but it was, what are you doing, Adam? What are you running from? Your life is a disaster. I'm married, 2 kids. Our marriage is in trouble. I did not know how to do marriage. My wife did not know. Both of us didn't come from good examples in our family life. And so we're 7 years in our marriage, and it's a struggle. we didn't want divorce, but yeah, we didn't want each. It was just ugly, and it was a crisis moment in my life of you've got to figure this out, and so it was one day in my kitchen, me and God, and it's all yours. I'm giving it all up. I'm giving up everything I believe myself to be, and I'm going to do what you've called me to. And so a year after that moment was when I was in Bible college full time. And so it wasn't, he was chasing me for a long time. I knew it. And I just finally surrendered before I was dead, or I did something that was not, you couldn't turn back from.
Adam, you talked about some losses, regrets. What's the single most biggest win you have had in your life?
Meeting Julie.
Mm-hmm.
The craziest thing about this, she laughs at the story. So when I showed up in New York, there was one of my partners. We're there, the team. So my roommate partner, we both showed up in New York. It's upstate. There's no restaurants. The hotel we're staying, there's a pizza place down the street from it. That's really like the only place to eat. We showed up there, ordered a pizza. Julie is our waitress, and she sets the pizza down, and she picked a piece of pepperoni off and ate it. And I remember looking up at her and I'm thinking, that's my wife. And there's no reason I didn't, I was not in a place where I knew God was leading me and all these things. But, and I was there for 6 months. We did not, we weren't pursuing each other. She actually, she had a boyfriend. It wasn't, but all of a sudden just it flipped towards the end, and, we hit it off. And had she not come into my life, I'm sure I would have destroyed it completely. Her statement to me to say, I don't want that, but whatever you tell me today, I want that to be truth. And so she caused me to want to be truthful. And it took a journey, as I already said, but had she not come to life, I wouldn't be talking to you. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Bob, we hear that answer over and over again. It's usually my wife. Often we are interviewing men, so it's my wife. It's a recurring thing. Adam, do you believe in general that behind every great man is a better woman?
Absolutely. Now, yes. I mean, it's really there's a team. I don't think you can be a good man without your wife, but your wife caused you to want to be a good man. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely together. You lift each other up. But yeah, she's my rock, and she's kept me sane, and it's she's been through a life with me that I don't know how people would have stuck around, because it was tiresome. We've always loved each other. That's never changed. Yeah. But I put her through some trials and some tough times, in our life, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm assuming that, you're building your legacy, and I'm assuming everybody has your last name. So they're all building your last name's legacy right now. And I'm assuming that you have some children that might want to carry on that legacy.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, my son, this is all going to be his at some point. He's got 3 boys. Oldest, like I said, last week came out with us on the first official job, and, so I hope that it's something that stays in the generations, for sure. That's what I've tried to build. I wasn't building it to sell, building it to create generational wealth and stability. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. One thing I love about Julie, the single most thing I love about her, is that she eats cake for breakfast. And that is true, right? Is that not true? And she's true. A little thing. She's just a little lady, right? I mean, she's a small woman. Tiny. And she loves her cake. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Hey, Adam, this has been great. As we wrap things up, what single book would you recommend to a young home service professional that wants to move ahead in their business?
Yeah. So as as I said, accidentally successful, right? So a couple of things before you get to the book, just get a business coach. At the beginning, when I realized this thing was becoming bigger than I had any understanding of, I think you were actually the one that taught me. Certainly, it's been our discussions. I call myself a business owner at the beginning, but I was self-employed, and that transition in my brain to understand the difference between being self-employed and a business owner. So that became, I needed a coach for that. I needed to get through that. So I got a good business coach, taught me a lot of stuff. Homework, study, read. You are a big proponent of that. Probably the one book, honestly, and it's a recent book, is Homeservice Millionaire. I think Tommy he's brilliant on the stuff that he's understood and learned and gives away. But I'm sure there's lots. I'm not going to go through my list and find you all kinds of books, but that is a big one. Helped transition some of my thinking, still wasn't fully transitioned. So that's a good one. There's still much, but it's a good one.
No, I would agree. And I would say, Bob, I think you'll back me up on this. Any education, whether it's reading, going to conferences, listening to an audio book, having a mentor, a coach, but all that stuff is so important for people who want to move forward in their business.
Yeah, 100%. The truth is most of us that get started in the trades, we get started in the widget that we're doing, whether it's garage doors or electrical or plumbing or whatever it is. We learn that skill, but we never learn that business skill, right? Which is the most important skill you need to have when you actually start what we call a business. We all think we're business owners when we do this and we go out there. And to your point, we're just self-employed, struggling entrepreneurs is what most of us are. And, to your point, you definitely need to be out there with a business coach. And who was your business coach, by the way?
Mike, his name is Mike. You know him, Jim, Calderwood, Mike Calderwood.
Calderwood.
He's
yeah.
So, a good guy, took me under his wings and challenged me because we were friends on top of it. He had access to my life that he'd kick my ass when I needed it for sure, and held me accountable.
Big an accountability partner. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what you need for sure.
Yeah. If nothing else, if that coach is nothing else but the person who keeps you accountable, that is huge. And that might be the single most important thing for a small business owner at that point. And if they can then read and go to conferences and meet other people, network, then you can kind of self-educate there. But sometimes you just need someone to say, get out of bed and go to the gym, right? So once you're at the gym, you're like, maybe I'll work out while I'm here. But if you don't have an accountability partner who says you've got to get to this point, you may not get there. Adam, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for going back in time and revealing your entire life. It's been fascinating.
It's yes, thank you. It stirred some stuff, but that's okay. I'll get through it today. But thank you for having me on. This has been a great opportunity, and I love this new concept of telling the stories. We all talk about our success, but what's the story? That's good.
Love it.
Thanks again.
All right. So thank you.
Entrepreneurship, got that inspiration. Yeah, now I'm just doing it. Working on these projects, my ideas I'm pursuing. No matter what the problem, the solution, I'm proving it. Let's talk about it and open up the dialogue.